All right, let's go. Hey, everybody. It's Charles and Peter. We're going to be talking about our bok choy and lettuce that we grew using 4 different fertilizer treatments. Uh, there we go. So, quick introduction. We're going to be talking about CEA, which stands for Controlled Environment Agriculture. It's also known as indoor agriculture. It covers a multitude of production methods defined by the ability to control the environment where crops are grown. Usually, it's grown in greenhouses or under some type of cover, and it was created to fix the problems that traditional agriculture struggles with, like heavy fertilizer use, pesticide use, and of course, land and water usage.
All right, so hydroponics is a CEA system that uses fertilized solutions and usually an inert or artificial medium to grow plants. They can be placed in urban areas or places with difficult growing climates. And usually these inert media that we use is sand, gravel, rock wool, clay beads, and perlite and coconut coir. The one that we used in this experiment was coconut coir. More on that later. And so the biggest thing about the inert materials is that they can be cleaned, recycled, and used repeatedly.
Moving on. So in hydroponics, the two most common system designs are the nutrient film technique, or NFT, as well as deep water culture, or DWC. Both systems recycle water and fertilizer solutions, making them far more efficient in water and fertilizer conservation than field-based farms. Deep water culture hydroponics is basically just a soilless growing method where roots are suspended or floating in a nutrient solution. Of course, that's going to be what we're going to be talking about today because that's what we used. In a deep water culture system, there's an air pump that is needed to provide oxygen and prevent the roots from drowning. This is done between two little air stones that are kept on both sides of the trays, which is what we use. Compared to other systems, they're relatively inexpensive to start up and maintain. And it's a recirculating system, so that means it requires less inputs than other hydroponic systems, such as the nutrient film technique.
All right. So with our experiment, we had 8 deep water culture tanks with 2 air stones for each tank. We filled each tank with around 40 gallons of water, and then used styrofoam sheets with 36 holes to plant the plants in. So we had 8 of those sheets. 4 different nutrient solutions were used, all with the same nitrogen concentration, but with different concentrations of the other nutrients. We tested them out with cultures of lettuce and bok choy, and then plants were germinated in coconut coir, placed in net cups, and harvesting happened within the 4th week of growth. Uh, 2 plant growing seasons were conducted for this experiment, and now we're gonna go ahead and move on.
So in session one, we grew a big red bok choy and a Roxy lettuce. It is important to note that we did change our lettuce cultivar. When we moved into session two, we moved it to a much like a green lettuce. Um, Water usage, EC, and pH were all monitored weekly for all 8 tanks. 3 plants from each tank were selected at random to be measured and tracked for canopy volume, wet weight, dry weight, chlorophyll, and anthocyanin.
All right. So with our treatment groups, we had if you can see on the diagram to the left, we had liquid blend 1 and liquid blend 2, and these are going to be organic 1 and organic 2. And then the solid blend 1 and solid blend 2 is going to be blend 1 and blend 2. So we just had a little renaming of all of those. Pretty much for all the organic blends, we just had to mix in different fertilizers together. So if you see on the picture to your very right, the top picture is going to be the fertilizers that we used for organic 1, and then the one on the bottom is going to be the ones that we use for organic 2. And then the pre-mixed blends, 15-5-15 was the one that we used for blend 1, and then 15-5-20 was the one that we used for blend 2.
So our results, I do want to note that our pH and EC graphs are all present in our lab report. But overall, the pH tended to stay around the like 4.5 to 7.5 range with only a few outliers. The EC decreased towards the end of the 2 sessions, The water usage for bok choy was generally higher than lettuce, and session 1 generally had much more water usage than in session 2.
Okay, so this was one of our graphs for water usage, and so pretty much this showed the bok choy and lettuce treatments for session 1 and session 2 and how much water they used for each treatment. Generally, if you can see, session 1 used a lot more water than session 2, and the bok choy cultures used more, or generally used more water than the lettuce cultures. If you see in session 1, we like such a the reason we had such a big spike of water usage was due to some of the leakages that happened during session 1. Session 2 didn't really have that many leakages, but that was all accounted for. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had for that one.
All right, moving on. So these two graphs are just kind of showing the average canopy volume for all the treatments and crops in session 1 and session 2. I do want to note that the session 1 graph, its range goes up to 3,000, while the session 2 graph only goes up to 2,500. The session 2 bok choy was smaller than in session 1. The lettuce cultivar in session 1 grew a lot larger than the lettuce cultivar in session 2. Let's losing place my notes. Oh no. Yeah. So in session 1, bok choy and lettuce grew best in organic treatment 2. In session 2, bok choy grew better in blends 1 and 2. Overall, the lettuce grew best in organic treatment 2. Moving on.
All right. So this one just had all the average wet weight and dry weights for all of the plants and also all of the treatments that we had. Generally, um, generally the bok choy cultivars were a lot more denser. And generally session two's cultivars and cultures were a lot denser than than the session 1 plants. Um, and we just kind of equated that to the cultivars that we use. So the cultivar for lettuce, especially, the session 2 cultivar tended to be a lot more heavier than the ones in session 1. And then for the bok choy, generally everything was kind of pretty similar. They just grew more denser in bok choy, and we think that was probably due to some of the temperature changes that happened during the later seasons.
Moving on. So this is showing the comparison between average chlorophyll and average anthocyanin. Anthocyanin, as we learned in class, causes a redder pigment, while the chlorophyll causes a greener pigment. Session 1 lettuce had much more anthocyanin than it did chlorophyll, while session 2 lettuce had more chlorophyll than it did anthocyanin. For the bok choy, the cultivars varied heavily between the two, and the data that we collected showed that there wasn't really a great trend towards one of either pigments. A little interesting. Moving on. Thanks for watching.
All right, yeah, and that was all we had. And yeah, that's us signed it off.
Best class. Okay, all right, let's see if this one will work. So stop sharing and stop recording.